Welcome to the Renaissance Spirit.
So you want to hear my story? You want to peel back the gilded laurels and see Trajan, not the imperator hailed by the masses, but the man himself. I wonder, will the truth satisfy you, or will it only confirm your expectations? After all, history has already etched me in marble as Optimus Princeps, the best of emperors. But let me warn you, behind that stoic face carved in stone lies a man of flesh full of contradictions, ambitions, fears, and yes, regrets. Shall we begin? My birth, the dawn of a glorious career, or so I'd like to say. I entered the world in 53 CE, not in the grand streets of Rome, but in Italica, Hispania. Yes, your Optimus Princeps was a provincial. My family was old, noble, connected to Rome's elite, but we weren't Roman in the purest sense. You can almost hear the scandalized whispers, can't you? A Spanish boy to rule the empire. It was my father, a career soldier, who laid the foundations for my rise. Pity that my childhood was a series of relocations with him. Battles were more of a constant companion than my own mother. Education. Oh, don't make me laugh. I was no philosopher emperor like Marcus Aurelius would later claim to be. My schooling came on the battlefield, in the heat of skirmishes and the cold, dark nights on campaign. My tutors were veterans, hardened soldiers who taught me the most valuable lesson of all, strength. I could never afford weakness, even as a boy. My relationship with my family. Close, I suppose, if close means you learned early to hide your emotions. My father's ambition burned within me like a fire, but I never could shake the nagging suspicion that he saw me as a tool. That feeling would haunt me throughout my life, but let's save that for later. Oh, and don't get too comfortable with this beginning. If you think this is a mere story of a boy becoming emperor, you're sorely mistaken. There are darker things waiting. How does one survive a rise to ultimate power without drowning in blood? But first, let's continue. You may think it was destiny, a straight line drawn from my birth to the imperial throne. Ha! If only it were that simple. My early career was more akin to a tightrope walk across the jaws of oblivion. If I fell, no one would have bothered to write these words. No, my rise was paved in blood, ambition, and sheer determination. I began where all sons of ambitious men begin, fighting for Rome, wielding sword and shield at the empire's edges. My first real taste of power came as legatus of the Legio VII Gemina in Hispania. The legions became my family. Each battle solidified my place, and soon I was being noticed by men who could make or unmake my future. I played the game of politics like one plays dice, with precision, calculated risk, and just enough arrogance to make you dangerous. But let's be clear, I wasn't born for purple. The throne was for the Julians, the Flavians, not some provincial soldier. Yet in the unpredictable theatre that was imperial Rome, fate has a sense of irony. Enter Nerva, the frail old man placed on the throne after Domitian's assassination, a man with more enemies than friends. Rome needed someone who could command loyalty. And who better than Trajan, the darling of the legions? It wasn't a coup. Nerva adopted me officially anyway. But let's not kid ourselves. Rome was cracking at the seams, and Nerva was a bandage on a festering wound. His reign was a brief, awkward pause, a prelude to my ascent. When he died in 98 CE, it was my time. The legions backed me without hesitation. You'd think they cheered me on because they believed I was destined for greatness. No, they wanted stability. They wanted someone who wouldn't butcher them like Domitian. And so there I was, the first emperor born outside Italy. Imagine the shock in the Senate. They had to bow to me, but not without grumbling. I could feel their eyes watching my every move, waiting for me to stumble. Did I stumble? Well, you'll see soon enough. I wasn't the ruthless dictator they feared, nor was I the puppet they hoped for. The question is, what kind of emperor was I, really? But before we get to that, let's talk about the man I succeeded. Domitian. Now there's a name that still makes Roman senators flinch. He ruled with the paranoia of a man convinced that every shadow held a dagger aimed at his back, mostly because he was right. He ruled like a despot, declaring himself Dominus et Deus, Lord and God. He was a tyrant, no doubt, but he kept the empire together, didn't he? You see, that's the dirty little secret. Even the worst rulers can maintain stability when fear is their weapon of choice. And then there was me, Trajan, the so-called savior. What did I inherit? A Rome tired of tyranny but terrified of chaos. Domitian's reign had left scars. His cruelty had been a hammer, smashing dissent, yes, but also pounding down hope. When I took the throne in 98 CE, I wasn't just following him, I was stepping into a world held together by mistrust and terror. The Senate sighed with relief when he was assassinated, but the empire itself teetered on the brink. So, what changed under me, you ask? Superficially, everything. I let the Senate breathe a little. No, I wasn't going to pretend they had real power. I wasn't a fool. But I knew how to play nice, or at least pretend. I made it clear that I would rule with a softer hand than Domitian's. A kinder, gentler emperor, they thought. Oh, the irony. Did I murder senators on a whim? No. Did I declare myself a living god? I had better things to do. I was a soldier at heart, and I took the same practical approach to ruling that I did to fighting campaigns. Efficiency over ego. I expanded the empire, brought prosperity, and yes, I was genuinely loved by many. But don't be deceived, I had the same iron fist as Domitian. I just knew when to hide it behind a velvet glove. Yet let's not pretend everything was perfect. The challenges I faced were no less daunting than his. The Germanic tribes were restless. Dacia had to be conquered, and Parthia would eventually loom on the horizon. Domitian's heavy hand may have been cruel, but he had been thorough. I, on the other hand, inherited the mess he left behind, and I had to clean it up while keeping the facade of a benevolent emperor. But beneath the surface? Oh, Rome hadn't changed. The Senate still plotted in dark corners, and the legions still grumbled about power-hungry generals. My reign may have appeared as a golden age, but trust me, Domitian's ghost lingered in every shadow. The empire was always one heartbeat away from returning to those dark days. Still, I like to think I did things differently. Maybe it wasn't the brutality of Domitian's reign, but Rome did feel the weight of my rule. In the end, what is an emperor if not a master of appearances? And appearances matter, don't they? After all, how you remember me will be shaped by what comes next. My death? Yes, we'll get to that. But first, let's talk about how I shaped the world before I left it. Death. I suppose you've been waiting for this part, the grand finale, where the mighty Trajan falls. You might think an emperor's death should be fittingly glorious, a battlefield blaze of glory, surrounded by loyal legions, the sun setting over a conquered land. Spoiler alert, that's not what happened. Instead, it was sickness that took me, not steel. The great Trajan, conqueror of Dacia, master of Rome, beloved by the people, was brought low by a fever. Funny, isn't it? After surviving endless battles, the treachery of politics, and ruling the mightiest empire on earth, it was my own body that betrayed me. In 117 CE, far from the grandeur of Rome, I lay dying in Selinus, a provincial backwater in Cilicia, as my empire stretched from Britannia to Mesopotamia. Irony, once again, proving itself to be my most faithful companion. I just returned from yet another campaign, pushing Rome's borders to their furthest limits in Parthia, when my strength failed me. Some conqueror I was. As the fever grew worse, my mind raced. I wondered, would my empire remember me as the emperor who gave them prosperity, who rebuilt their roads, their cities, their temples, or as just another name on a list? The pressure of leaving behind a worthy legacy began to gnaw at me. After all, I wasn't the first to sit on the throne, and I knew I wouldn't be the last. What if I was forgotten, lost in the pages of history? Even now, I wonder. There's a cruel irony in dying far from the city you've spent your life trying to perfect. Rome, the eternal city, my jewel, and I would never see it again. As I lay there, the imperial laurels slipping from my grasp, I wasn't surrounded by legions or the Senate, but by silence, just the sound of my labored breathing. Did I fear death? No. I had made peace with it long ago. What unnerved me was the idea that my achievements could fade, that the empire would crumble the moment I exhaled my final breath. Oh, but I wasn't just going to let go. Even on my deathbed, I was still making decisions. I sent a letter adopting Hadrian as my successor. He was loyal, ambitious, and clever, perhaps too clever, but he was also my kin. Would he carry on my legacy or dismantle it piece by piece? I'll leave that to historians to decide. When the fever finally claimed me, it wasn't with fanfare or the trumpets of triumph. No, it was quiet and almost peaceful. The empire I had fought to expand, to secure, and to stabilize now rested in Hadrian's hands. I had left Rome larger, wealthier, and more powerful than ever before, but was it enough? Did I conquer for glory or for Rome? But death doesn't answer those questions. No, those answers come later, after the dust has settled. Let's just hope Hadrian knew what to do with the empire I left him. My reign might have ended, but Rome, she marched on. Still, as I left this world, I couldn't help but wonder, was it all worth it? And so I died. But did I ever truly leave? The empire I shaped certainly didn't. My name is carved in stone, my victories are inscribed on monuments, and the roads I built still lead to Rome. But what is a legacy, really? Is it the cities I rebuilt, the provinces I added, or the bridges I constructed over troubled waters? Or is it something far less tangible, a whisper in the winds of history, an echo in the minds of those who came after me? You see, my reign was both a blessing and a burden for Rome. To some, I was Optimus Princeps, the model emperor who brought glory, wealth, and stability. To others, I was the man who expanded the empire beyond its means, sowing the seeds of future strain. Yes, I conquered Dacia, and I filled the coffers of Rome with its gold, but at what cost? Generations later, the empire would feel the weight of that expansion too large to control, too fragile to sustain. And Hadrian? He was no Trajan, though he had the wisdom to recognize my limits. Instead of adding more lands to the empire, he consolidated it, building walls instead of marching armies. You can almost hear the whispers of relief from the Senate. I imagine some of them thought, finally a sane emperor. Trajan would have marched into oblivion just to see what it looked like. But even Hadrian knew, deep down, that he inherited an empire held together by my victories. Legacy is a funny thing. You start your reign thinking you're shaping it, when really it shapes you. I expanded the empire, yes, but I also reshaped the Roman identity. Under me, the empire became a living organism that stretched, flexed, and consumed all in its path. For a time, Rome was unstoppable. I had given the people prosperity, safety, and pride. But did I give them a future? Or did I simply give them a fleeting golden age? Historians will tell you my reign was a pinnacle for the empire, a time of military might and civic progress. I'll admit it wasn't all bad. I saw to the welfare of my people, made sure the grain kept flowing, and oversaw the grandest public works since the days of Augustus. I repaired roads, aqueducts, and temples, making Rome more magnificent than ever. But here's the bitter truth no one likes to discuss. Greatness comes at a price, and someone always has to pay. Was I too ambitious? Probably. But ambition is what built Rome, and it's what drove me. And perhaps after all these centuries, ambition is the legacy I left behind. Maybe that's why people still remember me, even after all this time. So, was my legacy a gift to Rome? Or a curse disguised in the robes of triumph? History has its own way of making that decision, but I wonder, will you? Will you look at my reign and see the golden age of Rome? Or will you see the cracks in the foundation I left behind? But we're not done yet. The real question isn't about legacy, it's about worth. Was it all worth it? For that, you'll need to follow me to the final chapter. And believe me, you won't want to miss that part. Now we arrive at the question that haunts every emperor after the curtain falls. Was it all worth it? Was the empire I carved, the blood I spilled, the cities I built worth the price? I won't lie to you. This is where the self-doubt creeps in, even for a man of my stature. It's easy to look at my triumphs and see glory, but glory is fleeting. And when you rule, there's a gnawing voice in the back of your mind asking, what will last? Let's be honest. Conquest has its thrill. Expanding Rome's borders, hearing the roar of the legions, feeling the weight of a crown that grew heavier with every victory, it's addictive. But what did all that power serve? Was I building a Rome for the ages, or merely indulging my own desire for expansion? Even now, I can't say for sure. You might think an emperor has no room for such self-reflection. But when you sit at the apex of the world's most powerful empire, watching the sun set over your dominions, you start to question the nature of power itself. Was I a protector of liberty, a champion of equality, and a defender of democracy? Or was I just another man wielding power for his own ends? Libertas, aequitas, democratia, words that sound grand in marble, but what did they mean under my reign? I wasn't a tyrant like Domitian, but I wasn't exactly the champion of freedom either. I built bridges and roads, yes, but for whom? The rich benefited while the poor still scraped by. I expanded the empire's borders, but at what cost to those who lived under my conquests? True freedom, true equality, they are ideals that emperors like me pay lip service to while tightening our grip on power. The irony is not lost on me. But I did learn something. Even in my final moments, I understood that Rome's greatness was not in her emperors, her armies, or her conquests. It was in her people, her spirit, her civitas. If I could do it all again, maybe I would have focused more on the soul of Rome, not its ever-expanding borders. True greatness lies in fostering a society where liberty is not just a privilege of the few, but a right for all. Where equality isn't a slogan, but a lived experience. So, was it worth it? For the glory, perhaps. For the ego, certainly. But for the people. For the ideals I now claim to hold so dear? That's harder to answer. Maybe Rome needed more than an emperor like me. Maybe it needed someone who would guide her toward a future where equality, freedom, and democracy weren't just distant ideals, but lived realities. Yet, here we are, 2 millennia later, and the world still grapples with those same ideals. Perhaps my reign was worth it in showing the limits of empire, the hollowness of power without principle. I built Rome up, yes, but it's up to you to build the world I never could. Now, as for you, my modern viewer, standing on the precipice of your own age, what will you do with the lessons of my life? Rome's history is a mirror to the present. Her struggles, triumphs, and failures are all yours to reflect upon. Whether you walk the streets of Italica or stand in the shadow of Trajan's column, remember this: history is alive. It breathes through you, shaping your world just as it shaped mine. And speaking of history, if you wish to walk where I walked, to see the sights that tell my tale, there's no better place than Rome itself. Trajan's Forum still stands. My column still spirals upward, etched with my victories, and coins with my likeness can still be found in the collections of eager antiquarians. And while you're at it, why not start your own collection? An ancient Roman coin denarius bearing my image might be a small tangible link to the vast history we share. Before I leave you, let me pass on a final message from the good people of Renaissance Spirit, the channel dedicated to the pursuit of a just, equitable, and humane world. Our topics range across history, politics, personal growth, and yes, the majesty and madness of Rome. In the spirit of the Renaissance, we champion knowledge, both lost to time and waiting to be discovered. Embrace truth and learning, not just for the sake of knowing, but for the betterment of all humanity. Like me, you too have the power to shape your world just, perhaps, with a bit less bloodshed. So, if you're as curious about life as I was, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and let us know what other corners of history you'd like us to unmask. And don't forget to take the Quiz Vive Renaissance Spiritus. History, after all, isn't dead. It's merely waiting for you to rediscover it. Now go and build your own legacy. Make it one worth remembering.